This is Inside Indiana Business Radio on demand for Thursday, July 23rd, 2026. I'm Gary Dick. A manufacturer of 3D printed jet engines for uncrewed aerial defense applications has announced plans for expansion at its location about 30 minutes from the Indiana border in Ohio. Beehive Industries said this week it will invest $70 million to grow its operations in the Cincinnati suburb of Loveland and add about 200 jobs. That expansion announced in conjunction with Regional Economic Development Initiative Cincinnati, which represents the 15-county region of southwest Ohio, southeast Indiana, and northern Kentucky. The CEO of Munster-based Finward Bank Corp., the parent of People's Bank, says the bank's planned acquisition by Cincinnati-based First Financial Bank Corp. Is the right fit for the more than century-old institution. Ben Bochnowski says the $208 million deal will allow the bank to grow in the region.
There's a lot of customers that we've wanted to serve over the years that we couldn't because we just weren't big enough. We didn't have the tools. We didn't have the legal lending limit. Certain kinds of lending have become more and more complicated for community banks like ours, where it used to be our bread and butter, just straight up business lines of credit. It's just harder to do that. Well, to be in that kind of sweet spot where you're that $4 billion bank, where you really are this community bank focused regionally on the Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana region, but also have the backing of a much larger bank, that's a really great value proposition in my mind.
Fort Wayne-based Steel Dynamics is reporting second quarter net income of $534 million. That's up from $299 million during the same period last year. The company says the results were driven by record steel shipments of 3.7 million tons and growing demand in several key markets, including commercial construction, data centers, and manufacturing. In southeast Indiana, the Charlestown Advisory Plan Commission this week gave its approval for a $105 million data center after a contentious meeting that featured heavy opposition from residents. The 4-3 vote paves the way for the Florida-based developer to build the facility, which is expected to bring about 20 full-time jobs to the southeast Indiana city. A timeline for the data center's construction not immediately known. From the state's number one source for Indiana business news, you're listening to Inside Indiana Business Radio.
West Central Indiana is essential to Indiana's future. Join IBJ Media, Inside Indiana Business, and the state of Indiana to explore regional growth Thursday, August 13th in Terre Haute for Innovate West Central Indiana, presented by CareSource, Indiana University, and Old National Bank. Featuring Governor Mike Braun and business and community leaders, join us at the Indiana State University Holman Center Thursday, August 13th in Terre Haute. RSVP now at ibj.com/innovate.
Regional leaders gathered this week at the Racklin Murphy Encore Center in South Bend to celebrate completed projects and preview future investments during the inaugural Regional Impact Rally. That event brought together business, education, nonprofit, and government leaders to highlight accomplishments from the state's READY program. South Bend-Elkhart Regional Partnership CEO Bethany Hartley.
When you walk through our downtowns, you can see the impact and the difference these investments are making. These investments were never about any single city. They're about proving that we can move as one region and win as one region, which we have, and we're going to keep doing. When we look at our region and the amount of funding we receive, we are punching well above our weight. And none of this happens by accident. It happens and it continues to happen because of mayors, county commissioners, universities, manufacturers, healthcare systems, foundations, and entrepreneurs in this region deciding years ago to stop competing with each other and start competing with everyone else. And we've got to keep doing that.
The founder and former chief executive officer of Indianapolis-based marketing firm Trendy Minds has returned to the CEO role nearly 2 years after stepping down. Trevor Yeager, who launched the agency in 1995, said he made the decision to return as CEO to lead the firm through its next chapter. In 2024, Yeager announced he was stepping away as CEO, and the firm hired Stacy Summer, a former executive at a San Francisco-based public relations firm. Trendy Minds spokesperson Claire Gregory tells Inside Indiana Business Summer is no longer with the firm, but did not provide any additional details on her departure. This is Gary Dick for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.